Marianne, thank you so much for doing this. And thank
You're
you for
so
that
welcome.
extra trouble. Yeah, this is amazing. Everyone, I know most of you already know this woman. Marianne, you're a living icon. You, way before you got into politics, you were changing consciousness. You were sharing new ideas and new ways.
Skating on Venice Boardwalk.
And skating on Venice Boardwalk. And so, look, you really don't need an introduction, especially to the people that are following me and that are following you. And so what I want to look at this today, we're calling this the Political Renaissance Fireside. I did light a candle so we could have an actual fire. There is a candle here. We're calling this a Political Renaissance Fireside. And I want to just sort of invite you as a mother of this movement and the author of A Politics of Love to just share with us. This is a group of activists. These are people who are already inspired to the cause, and like me. And so for me, I'm taking a huge step inspired by you and getting, over the years, I've gotten more engaged in politics, but now I'm running for the first time for Venice Neighborhood Council President. And so the people listening are people just like me who are inspired by you. And I just want to hear what you have to say for us, to all of us.
Well, thank you. First of all, I just want to say congratulations, Ben, because I think that this is really important that someone like yourself is taking this step. And the reason is that electoral politics matters. And so many of the visions that we all have, the aspirations, the yearnings that we have to see the world be different. There has been a tendency within the higher consciousness community to think that electoral politics is somehow not relevant to the larger movement for global change. And in fact, it has been seen like such a toxic realm that many people in the higher consciousness community for that reason have felt, well, I don't want to have anything to do with it. But look at what that means. That means that the people who have the most to give, sometimes the most forward-moving consciousness, the most whole person integrative consciousness, which is the most aligned with the imperatives of the 21st century, leave a toxic situation. And of course, because they're not there, it only gets more toxic. It only gets more toxic. And so it makes people go even more in another direction. But look where that has taken us. It has taken us to the point where the field of electoral politics is so often saturated with the most regressive consciousness. So I always felt that where there's the biggest wound, there needs to be the biggest influx of healing. And I've never understood, actually, maybe because of my own background, my own childhood, etc. I've never understood the resistance to greater participation in electoral politics. Not that people didn't participate by voting, but by really seeing it as a vessel and a vehicle for change. I still don't see politics as the vehicle for bringing about the highest level of change, but I see it as an obstruction, a dangerous obstruction that can no longer be ignored. And that is not only true in national politics, but everything begins on these local levels. And in a place like Venice, very much so. The right wing of the political spectrum has always been very hip to the realization, in a way, more psychologically sophisticated, interestingly enough, certainly more politically sophisticated, in the understanding that you have to deal with local politics, you have to deal with state politics, because that's really where it gets down and gets dirty. Sometimes the struggle between what we would see as the real progressive vision for society versus one that is stuck in a very market-driven, centered, let the market get what it wants first, and then we'll deal with whatever is left people will get. Right. And the people on the left have been, will show up for the hot and sexy campaigns, will show up for the midterms, maybe, will definitely show up for the presidential. When really, if we really want to talk about changing the world, we're talking about things like what you're doing, Ben, running for the president, the city councils, neighborhood councils, things like this. This is where it all starts. And so I'm very impressed that you're doing this, and happy to be in support.
Yeah, thank you so much. Years ago, I think it was 2014, when you were running for Congress in District 33 in Los Angeles, where Venice is actually in District 33.
And I won Venice, by the way.
Yes,
I won the cool places. I won Venice, and I won, what's the one up in the mountains?
Topanga.
Yeah, I won Venice in Japan. I said I
Yeah.
won the cool people, right?
Yeah, those are definitely the cool in LA.
Yeah. Oh no, we.
Sorry,
Uh-huh.
I froze for a
Yeah.
second. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Those are definitely the cool places in LA. Well, I'm so grateful to have had that experience of meeting you, because what's so interesting is I did volunteer on both of Obama's presidential campaigns. I was always interested in politics, even growing up. My family's very conservative. My relatives are interested in politics. My parents are politically engaged to an extent. They're sort of political hobbyists, I guess you could say. And I remember when I was in kindergarten, I went to school with a Bob Dole for President pin on, and I was campaigning for Bob Dole, and I didn't
That's
I
very
knew
funny,
I knew
actually.
I knew that politics was relevant and was important.
Hmm.
um, and I later learned you have to like really get to know the issues and really get to know your own heart on the different issues. You can't even
Oh,
really
that.
choose. Yeah, exactly. So I was
Oh, that.
five, but yeah, I was five. But yeah, by the time I was voting age, I definitely became really interested and studied political theory, especially, and the possibility of something new. I've always been really more of an artist, more of a creative, more of a lover than someone who really sees law or legislation as like the primary medium. Very left brain. It took me a while to sort of develop those parts of myself, and I found you were speaking at a yoga studio in Santa Monica, and I went to see you there, and I was pretty new to. I was pretty new to your message. I'm going to need to grab a phone charger here in a second. I was pretty new to your message, but when I was with you, what I saw was that you were talking about, and I remember the specific sentence you said. You said the three smooth stones that David had to pierce Goliath in the third eye. And that sparked something for me where I was like, wow, it's consciousness.
Hmm.
It's consciousness. it's
Hmm.
it's something where we have to go in to the behemoth of a system and change the consciousness of it. And from that point on, of course, I went to I've got someone bringing me a phone charger. Thank you. Bring it. Run. Anyway, yeah, the exciting thing for me was that you were actually running for that office. You were running for Congress. I went to a number of those events, and all I knew to do, I felt so ignorant about the process, all I knew to do was volunteer. And in my heart and in my meditation and prayer, all I knew was like, it was like God was saying, learn from this woman, study this woman, serve this woman, volunteer, be there, be a part of this process. And that's what I did. And I have to say, just from serving on your campaign, I learned a whole lot. I learned a lot during that congressional campaign. I became more involved than I ever had. And we got involved with some serious actions. The protest against Citizens United at the federal building in West LA. You kept us hip to really crucial issues. And then the same thing with your presidential campaign. When you ran for president, I remember specifically telling you, I was like, I will literally stop everything that I am doing to serve what you're doing, because I could see that you had the magic. You had something in there that brought life back into politics. And that's what I see us here in Venice. I see the opportunity to do that. Like you said, Venice supported you. You won Venice when you ran for
Hmm.
Congress. And so
Hmm.
what I see here is that same consciousness is still building. And we
Hmm.
want to create change. We have artists, we have musicians, we have healers here, and the consciousness of a healer, the consciousness of a therapist and a counselor, and bringing those minds into a council so that their perspectives can be heard. That's something, you said new paradigm leadership is about holding space for the brilliance of others, holding space for the brilliance of others. You didn't want to go to Washington to fight for us. You wanted to go to Washington to co-create with us.
Hmm.
And I find myself feeling the same way about Venice.
Well, that's beautiful. And to whatever extent my campaigns have influenced your thinking, to the point that you would say those things and stand on those things, it makes me very happy.
I'm like, dude, you're so cool. You're the coolest person. You're 1,000 years ahead of your time. I see it. People on the cutting edge see it. Venice is a really unique community. These are cutting edge thinkers. These are innovators. There's a very powerful spiritual, indigenous, shamanic community here.
Yeah, of course.
And it's a beautiful vortex. And I think that we understand you. We understand us, some Marianne Williamson. So in the, earlier when we were speaking today, I told you about the word Renaissance. We were talking about how Venice, Italy was the home of the Italian Renaissance, and how we have this sort of energy infused into our community here because we're named for Venice, Italy. And you shared that that's actually a word that you had used in your career a number of times, Renaissance.
Yeah, I worked at a church in Michigan, and it was called I can't remember the name of Unity, but I changed it to the name Renaissance Unity. And also I founded an organization years ago that became the Peace Alliance, but began as the Global Renaissance Alliance. So like you, I've always felt a great attraction to that word. Of course, rebirth. We're living at a time when it's all about repair, rebirth, regeneration, renaissance. You were talking before about it being spring. Today, you left me a beautiful message about how that which has been hidden begins to emerge on this first day of spring, and that's what a renaissance is. And the renaissance of the 1400s, 1500s, etc., all of that came about after the Black Plague, after the bubonic plague. So we're coming out of a very difficult time, including a plague. And I think that people are ready for rebirth. People know that it can't be as simple as going back to where we were. You can't go back to where you were. That's number one. But more than that, we realize some of the ways that where we were before paved the way for where we got to, for Trump, for the inept response to COVID, for so much of the economic injustice that plagues us as much as COVID plagues our bodies. So there is in the air, I think, a great yearning for something new, for some reemergence of the best of us. And I think that in order for that to happen, like I said, that cannot just be cultural. It cannot just be social. It also has to be political. And that's why these people running for office. This is what's important, that people look at someone like yourself and go, yeah, he's running for office. This is what we're doing now. And I felt that with my own campaigns, for which I was grateful. And people got it. People who actually participate in something like this get how cool it is. But you have to participate to get that.
Yeah, exactly. You have to really be there. I remember seeing you had great celebrity support and everything, and I think that may have been how I actually found out about your congressional campaign, was Alanis Morissette. There was a time in Ben Decker's life when only Alanis Morissette understood him. And so
I understand that, actually.
Yeah, and when she said
only Bob Dylan understood me, so I understand the concept.
Yeah, I've been there with Bob too. I had moments with Bob. There's a few others in there. The Hallelujah in Vienna, those songs really called to me. Vienna Waits for You. I always kind of felt that spark in my heart towards Zion, I guess you could say. In the spiritual tradition I was raised in, we talked a lot about building Zion, and the message of that was that Zion is wherever the pure in heart are. And so it was this idea that if we purified our hearts, we created a sacred atmosphere, and we could interact with other people. And if we could see the purity in another person's heart, we could co-create a space. That's why I love for the campaign, the slogan we've chosen, obviously so inspired by A Politics of Love, your book, A Politics of Love. I love it. It's a great gift. All of my volunteers and staffers it's required reading. Yeah. And so is Healing the Soul of America.
Thank you.
And there's Adrienne Marie Brown, I believe is her name. There's another author I just found who wrote a book called Pleasure Activism. And another one, it's a good one. And another one called Emergent Strategy. Those are two new ones. And it's really about authenticity in a way of really, really experiencing the self-purification necessary, that you bring up often, that Gandhi said was necessary before entering into political activism. Self-purification is necessary.
That the self-purification precedes direct political action, he said, but he also said that the end is inherent in the means. That, you know, when we think of traditional political paradigm, we think that the end justifies the means. But but what Gandhi said was that the end is inherent in the means. We cannot give what we aren't. And so, you know, that's where we all know the famous line, "Be the change." The idea that we want to find that, as you would say, Zion in our hearts before we can make it manifest. In Mike Nichols' film that came out many years ago, Working Girl, that great film, there was a song that Carly Simon wrote called "The New Jerusalem." And of course, really what you're talking about is paradise, the idea that we would be able to manifest on earth that kingdom which reflects the best of who we are within. And at this point, I think what a lot of Americans feel is, I'm not even hoping for paradise right now if we can even just have a survivable future, one in which the human race has a chance to survive and the planet itself has a chance to be able to endure the predatory nature of humanity over the next 100 years. You know, this is not just some ideational, let's create Zion. This is, let's stop and interrupt the terrible status quo trajectory, which is literally represents an unsurvivable option for the future of the human race. And then those forces are being played out on local levels because, you know, you were talking about Venice before. Venice, as we know, is this, you know, this center of spiritual, artistic, hip, cool. We understand all that. But it's also the center of some very valuable real estate. And the marketplace has discovered it. And you can see in Venice, as you can see so many places, how the rampage of market forces, which would obliterate what are to many of us some of the most precious aspects of a society and a community. And we need people in these neighborhood councils who not only bring in the consciousness of the, you know, the healer, the consciousness of the artists and so forth, but also the consciousness of people who would say no to certain forces that would turn our world into a parking lot.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's something that you're touching on, two of the most important things that we're facing right here in Venice. And look, if it's happening in Venice, it's happening all over the world. You know, and if it's happening anywhere in the world, it's happening on some level in Venice. This is a very international community. It's a microcosm in a very unique way. We have more billionaires per capita than any other part of Los Angeles. We also have the only part of Los Angeles that has more unhoused people is Skid Row, which is internationally known for its unhoused population. Yeah. So it's very, very serious. It's not just idealism and meditation and rose petals. Those are the symbols of something new. You know, this week we gave out personal hygiene kits to a number of different people who are unhoused in the encampments. And look, the thing is, it's got to be so holistic. We've got to approach these situations holistically. I'm talking to these people. I'm learning about their individual situations. I'm following what City Hall has been doing with the unhoused population, the different legislation, the centralization of services in one area, which tends to magnetize people, even from other states who are unhoused, magnetizing them into one area. You know, so there are subtle nuances to every step of the way here. And what I'm finding is a lot of the times on these councils, you hear that these people are representing their own personal agenda. These people, they're either they're wealthy real estate people, and so they're really pro what they call development, but other people call gentrification, you know, and what they call, you know, blessing the community, bringing new light and beautiful new facilities into the community, while another community feels edged out and sort of disregarded and nudged out, you know. And so you find that these candidates, all of them are good people because you see that they're interested in wanting to support the community. I know all the people on the council right now. We're not dealing with evil people. What we're dealing with are people who are largely representing their own personal interests. And the purpose of a council is to hear the community out so that we can discuss these problems. And then the role of the president of the council is then to relay that message to the city council, to mayor of Los Angeles, to the city council members of Los Angeles, specifically our city council member, Mike Bonin, right now. And so the interesting thing is, to be in these positions is not only to represent your own agenda or your own desires or your own needs. That's important. That's an important perspective. But it's really to communicate with the entire community and hear different people's opinions and hear the nuances of how they experience these things, not assume that we already understand them.
Well, not only to communicate it, but to represent it. That's what representative government is. And
Right.
like you were talking about before, gentrification, edging out particular communities. Venice is an example of a place where not only does that represent terrible personal human loss, but also tremendous cultural loss. I mean, when I think of, the things that we associate, the cultural uniqueness of Venice, if we allow market forces, if we allow just people who know how valuable the real estate is, they could, build another shopping mall here, another condo unit there, another multi-million-dollar group of, homes over here and over there. It's like you said, it edges people out, it edges the culture out, and that is what's happening all over America, and that is the problem. So there is more than just communicating. There is really representing the community who doesn't want to be edged out and who usually do not represent the kind of economic leverage that would enable them to have any power to repudiate those gargantuan economic forces that see all the money that's to be made in a place like Venice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big deal.
Exactly. So many of them not only are feeling that and don't have the resources, they honestly don't even know where to begin. Because, like you said, it's a national problem, and really, in some ways, it's an international problem. In some ways, it's an ongoing sort of remnant of the colonizer type of consciousness of just sort of like moving in and taking over an area and siphoning all of the resources out, etc. And so the people who are really living here, a lot of them just see it as such a huge thing that they can't even engage with. But that's what I found so powerful about neighborhood council. Is if we talk to the city, if we talk amongst ourselves, and we really have a clear plan and a clear strategy of what we want to do, and we represent that to the city will have to respond. The city will have to respond to the stakeholders of a community. And, there are other people I'm running against. I'm the only one who's not an incumbent of some kind. And they're, like I said, they're not bad people. These aren't bad people that we're talking about. But an idea comes to mind where when you were running for president, and there were so many people who were really inspired by your ideas, so many people who were in politics, who had entire careers in politics inspired by your ideas, some officially acknowledging the inspiration of your ideas, and others kind of, rewording some of your concepts. But something that you said was, a repudiation of the notion, a rejection of the notion that those who are entrenched in the system are the ones who should continue to be given the keys to the kingdom, to continue to drive.
Right. The idea is that only somebody whose career has been entrenched in the system that drove us into this ditch should possibly be considered qualified to lead us out of the ditch. And sometimes it's someone who is not from within the system, who has the freshest perspective on it, and doesn't really need to be part of it anymore than they already are. Namely, they don't have to be part of it at all to say that's not the direction that we want to take. And that's really the profundity of democracy, is that it shouldn't have to be. There shouldn't, our Constitution was written in such a way that there was not a political class. Even in running for president, they didn't say, the founders didn't say you have to have been a governor, you have to have been a senator, you had to have been a congressperson, because they were leaving it to the whatever generation it was to decide for themselves what is the skill set that is most applicable to driving the society in the direction we want to go now. And I think that that's what you're pointing to. Your skill set is a fresh perspective. Your skill set, in many ways, your qualification, and listening to you tonight, I'm very pleased to hear that you obviously have dug in. You understand what the larger forces are. And I think everybody's listening tonight and feeling more confident that you are and that you will continue to grow within that. But also the fact that you don't come from that world is also part of what you bring to it. That you don't know all the players, that you haven't spent your life, doing the deals, and you keep saying they're not bad people. Well, of course they're not bad people. This isn't about good people versus bad people, but it is about forces which, if they unfold over time, lock up something, and that's very important in a city in a place like Venice, because if this goes too far, it's locked up. And you're already getting there. You've already got so many multi-million-dollar homes. You've got so many billionaires. It's been a while now that certain forces have discovered the value of the land, and it's beyond gentrification in a place like Venice, because Venice is so valuable, right there on the water. You gotta hurry. This is like urgent, because once a certain something is dead, it's over. You can't bring it back. And I think that's what you want to remember, whether it's a mural on a wall, or a place where musicians gather, or a place where certain people can live. That ecosystem of the cool, right? If that's obliterated, it's not like it's gone. Once it's gone, it's gone. And so I think there's a real fierce negation that's necessary to say to certain people, there's a place for development. There's a I'm not an anti-capitalist. But we now have a situation where privatization, deregulation, even in California, which we've always thought is this, progressive forward-thinking place. But even there, because there is such value, capitalist forces have to be kept in their lane. That's all. Just you have to stay in your lane, guys, because we don't think that you should own everything. We don't think that everything should be up for your grabs. We don't think that everything should be up for your development for no other reason than that you have the money to make it happen. And that's really what we're talking about here. Who's going to stand up for the artists? Who's going to stand up for the cultural entities? Who's going to stand up for the diversity? Who's going to stand up for the people who are the lifeblood of this community, but they don't have the money to exercise this kind of power? And who's going to stand up for people who don't have the money but have lived here for generations? Who better to do that than someone who comes from that community? I felt so much in my own career. I had done so much advising. And at a certain point, you feel like, I don't want to advise you anymore. Get out of that chair. Let me sit there. It's not about it. At a certain point, it's not about advising those who hold the levers of power. It's about getting the levers of power yourself and saying, we're driving this car in another direction. And like I said, whether you're talking about Venice or you're talking about the United States or you're talking about the planet, we cannot afford to tarry.
Exactly. Yeah, I so appreciate that, because even before the pandemic, this was basically a level 10 emergency in Venice, not just gentrification, like you said, but kind of really a lot of people feeling like there's a systematic movement of cultural erasure here.
Well, it is. And if I may, I'm glad that you actually said that, because that needs to be stated, because that is what it amounts to. And it's interesting that you say that, because something we need to look at. You've said over and over, these are not evil people. These are not people who wake up in the morning and they say, we want to erase a culture. That's not what this is about. It's more insidious than that. It's that they wake up in the morning and they don't feel that it's their responsibility to have to worry about that. But you know who should worry about it? Government. That's what government should be for. Government should be the balance between individual liberty and concern for the common good. And part of that individual liberty is economic liberty. And it should be government saying, you know what? We want you to have economic abundance. We really appreciate you bringing money into the neighborhood, but not to the point where it would amount to what you said, cultural erasure. And it is someone coming from the cultural communities that actually need to be sitting on these councils. It's not enough that you're just lobbying government officials. We have to be in there. And that is, cultural erasure is exactly what you're talking about. This in some places is, erasures of whole indigenous cultures. You were talking before about the colonizing mentality. It is a legacy of a colonization mentality. It absolutely is. And we need to see it for that and call it what it is.
Right, right. Yeah, and so what I'm finding here is that when I start to talk to the Venetians about neighborhood council, first of all, we have less than a 10% voter rate. There's less than 10% of
Gotta
people.
fix that, Ben.
Oh, I'm going to triple it. We're tripling it.
Good. And I hope
Uh,
everybody listening knows that you have a job to do. You all have to bring 3 people or 5 people or however many Ben tells you that you
yeah,
need to bring.
yeah, exactly, guys. Text me. My number's in my bio. Also, go to my website. Check in with us. BenDeckerForVenice.com. We got a lot of initiatives. We have a really great team of volunteers in Venice, of really creative people, diverse people. We almost created our own neighborhood council. We have enough people to
Shadow
even
government.
yeah, we have our own, exactly. We have our own shadow government, a light government. It's a government of different people from different populations here in Venice. And when I start to talk to them, every one of them is saying, I've always shied away from politics.
Exactly.
I've
And that's why
always
it's
shied away.
important that you're running. And that's why I think, Dennis Kucinich once said to me, every campaign has a success of some kind. And that's part of the success of certain campaigns is, oh, you can do that. Someone like her can do that. Someone like him can do that. And I hope that there are people, and I feel confident that there are, listening to you talk tonight, who not only are thinking, yeah, I'm going to help Ben win, but are also thinking, well, she can run and he can run. Maybe I'll run. And that's what I really
Exactly.
hope, because this has to be a movement of more conscious politics. There must be a movement, big
And
one.
that's what I've been finding is a lot of these people who are coming on to volunteer, they're not quite ready to run in this cycle right now where the campaigns are already rolling, but they're putting all the upcoming meetings in their agenda. I'm giving them those calendar invites. They're putting them in.
Absolutely.
They get to give public comment. They
And
can participate.
it's people think of it as dry and not fun. It's actually a lot of fun. And when you get to the
Mhm.
DC aspect of it, it's really fun. I know before I came on tonight, when I could hear you, but I couldn't see you yet, I heard you say Tandra's name, our friend Tandra. Tandra, if you're there, I see you running. We got to I hope a lot of people who are watching you tonight are thinking, maybe I'll do that someday.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I felt when I saw you running. And I learned so much from the process. And so much of what I really learned from you was listening. Something you said, I know that you read a lot of biographies, you study great people, you study people who've done influential, important things, and you've turned me on to, I'm a biography reader. And one of the things that you said was about great people, about people who've done great things. They
Mm-hmm.
don't, and powerful people, they don't always respond right away. They sometimes take a beat
Mm-hmm.
to allow the question
Yeah,
or the circumstance
yeah,
to sit with them.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so
That's
that's what I feel like I've been doing. I've been participating on the neighborhood council for the last 9 years or so, in and out. I'm not someone who's going to raise my hand to do a public comment just to complain, just to insult someone. It's not really my personality type. I'm more likely to be quiet. I'm more likely to be quiet until it really, really matters, And I feel like I've been listening for a long time. I've been learning for a long time. Earlier this year, I ran for one of the vacant seats that were available, and I lost. I didn't win, and everyone was saying, you know what, this is a better fit for you this next election. And so now this is running for the president of the council, and what's so interesting about it is when you really look at what a president does, they're supposed to preside over a council. They're not in charge. They're not a dictator. It's not just their ideas. To preside over something is really to hold space and to really, really listen. And so when I'm studying the bylaws and watching, council meetings and engaging with these council meetings, I can see how some of these people on these councils, they really need more time than is allotted in these spaces. And so that's what's so powerful about the way Bernie and AOC and you use social media. And I'm active on social media. People have access to me. Everyone has my cell phone number. And for the record, that cell phone number goes to me. Someone else is not answering that. That goes to me. Yes, it is a separate app than the one my mom has, but it goes to me. I'm the one responding to those things, And so a part of what I want to do is make myself available. Right now, local politics it feels so disconnected from the locals. And it's not just here. I have friends in Salt Lake, in Austin, in Utah, in Denver, all throughout the Midwest, Chicago, Cincinnati, Indiana. The locals don't feel connected to local politics, and it's 100% true here in Venice. And look, I've been in Venice since 2012. I have pictures of me hosting an event with you at the beautiful temple on Rose Avenue in 2014, 2015, 2016, and with big groups in the room. I'm not new to Venice. Venice is not new to me. Venice knows Ben Decker. But as soon as I filed, the talking points came out. No one even knows this guy. No one even knows him. Okay, so the 12 people who are sitting in that room right now.
Very good point, Ben. Good for you. Good for you. Plenty of people know you. That's right. And I think that, and what I saw, it's not about how many people know you. It's about getting your community activated. And that's what has taken a while to make many people in the higher consciousness, culture, creative community know if we have one of us running, we have to support that. We have to get out there. Like I said, when I ran for Congress, and I did win Venice, because Venice knows, of course, that's the beauty of California, too. California likes new things. Some places are like, we don't do that way here. In California, it's much more of a place where if you represent something new, people are more likely to go, hey, that's cool. Although politics can be sewn up, and what you just said is a really good point. To that system, you're a new kid. Who are you? Who the hell let you in? And you're saying, all the people I've known since I came to live here years and years ago, but we are invisible to you guys. That is the problem. And being invisible, we've just stayed over to the sidelines. We see what you've done. We're coming in now. And that's the way we have to see the country. You've seen us as invisible. We've conspired with that by acting invisible. We're not invisible anymore. We see what you've done. We're coming in and we're taking it from here. That's got to be the consciousness of the new politics.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember something that Bernice King said. You had interviewed her on your podcast.
My podcast.
Check out the Marianne Williamson podcast. Dude, Marianne, you have the best podcast.
Thank you, honey. Thank you.
I love it. I love everything that you're doing. I love your interview with James Cameron. Love your conversation with Trudy Goodman.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Thank you.
I was specifically appreciative of reigniting my connection to Bernice King. I was familiar with her content, had seen her, and I had a lot of respect for her.
Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter, of course, for those who don't know.
Yes, exactly. Martin Luther King Jr.'s youngest daughter. And hearing her on your podcast, of course, I follow her and I immersed myself in her content. And I really appreciated some of the things that you guys talked about. There was something specific about just this notion of how spirituality and politics, not religion and politics, but spirituality and politics is not a new idea. It's actually something that's very well known in these really crucial evolutionary political movements. And also something that you guys said was, let's not pretend everyone liked him when he was here. And of course, I'm not saying that that either of us are that, but I'm inspired by the notion that we can and have seen there is a legacy of spiritual principles victoriously triumphing in the political atmosphere, even in the face of, adversity.
The two most powerful political movements of the 20th century were the nonviolent political revolution by which the Indians got the British to leave India, and the civil rights movement, nonviolent civil rights movement in the United States in the 1960s. So it was the nonviolent revolutions of the 20th century that were the most successful ones. So as you're saying, we don't have to reinvent any wheels. We just have to, there's a book called Testament of Hope that is the collected writings and speeches of Martin Luther King, and you could just pick it up anywhere. Of course, the essential writings of Gandhi. These are the kind of books you just get them, you put them next to your bed and open them up anywhere. I remember when years ago, that other guy who is blessedly no longer in our face, but I remember Ivana Trump had said in a Vanity Fair article that Donald Trump slept with Hitler's speeches next to his bed. And when a reporter asked him about it, his response was, I thought, particularly chilling. He said, "That doesn't mean I read them."
Wow.
But there's something about that book that sits next to your bed. And I think when it comes to Gandhi and King, it's such a wonderful book. Just to open it anywhere, because it's politics in the way that feels very natural to a person who realizes that there are patterns of nature, and that the patterns of nature are they are present in the patterns of what Lincoln called the angels of our better nature. And they have to do with our being people who know how to work collaboratively with other people, who know how to work with deference and with devotion to the earth, who know how to bring out from the depths of us our own creativity and our own productivity, and to synergistically work with the productivity and synergistically with other people. That creates a happy tribe, that creates a happy community, that creates a happy nation. I love what you were saying to me earlier today, love thy neighborhood. If we take seriously we're on this earth to love thy neighbor, then that should also mean love thy neighborhood. And of course, that's the 21st century. The 21st century gestalt, the zeitgeist of this moment, is that we, and this I think is very important for the higher consciousness community too, it can't just be my evolution. It's got to be our evolution. It can't just be work on self. It can't just be self-care. It has to be community care. It has to be the care of the city. It has to be the care of the nation and of the planet. And I think that looking at places like Los Angeles, I think that there has been some very appropriate criticism of this kind of privileged consciousness thing, where you bring spirituality only to bear on making your life better. It's got to be how it could be making our life better. And including the fact in a place like Venice, when you were talking about gentrification, when you were talking about edging out certain people, you are talking about people who've lived there for decades, who are not moneyed, who have no financial leverage, and who, if they don't have people like you on things like their neighborhood councils, will simply be edged out and they'll have to go somewhere else. And that's what's happening not only in Venice, not only other people, other places in the country, but as you were so correctly saying, other places in the world as well.
You know, I know that when a lot of times when we talk about spirituality, we have this idea of universal truth, the absolute truths, and then relative truth. And I see them as a question of proportion. There's the absolute truth, which is the eternal truth, that which never changes. And then the relative truth, which expresses through specific circumstances. And so we find that sense of proportion when we come back to that universal truth, like a miracle being a shift in perspective, an interchange. Something you said a long time ago, maybe you said it once or twice, you said, to say I need a miracle is the same thing as saying I am willing to change. I'm willing to change on the inside. And so the open mind, especially, you know, the Buddhist concept of the open mind or the beginner's mind, the empty rice bowl, it's hearing and observing that which is taking place without projection. And what I see when I walk through the streets of Venice, because I made it my business about a year ago, I made the decision to run for this. And so the last year I've made it my business. And so went around the neighborhood, got to know as many Venetians as possible. And I remember just holding that empty rice bowl in my consciousness and seeing for the firsthand, not for the first time, but firsthand, the suffering of the unhoused population. And something interesting happened. I noticed on the councils, we hear a lot about the unhoused population, the end. There's an entire spectrum of people who are unhoused or on the edge, who are having trouble paying their rent. You know, there are the moratorium on evictions is being lifted. There's a number of these different concerns, you know, and also the reality that Venice, as a hub of creativity, of ingenuity, of ideas, and of great resources, we do have the ability to try something new. And part of that new thing that we need to do, I've got a lot of cousins in Salt Lake City, you know me. And so, and even Tandra, who you mentioned, we found out, it took us 10 minutes to realize we were cousins, we're distant cousins. So I got a lot of cousins in Salt Lake City. And when I've been studying what other cities have done about the problem of their unhoused, you know what Salt Lake City did?
They
Social
just
work.
built, well, didn't they also build houses?
They built a number of different, they had a number of different housing solutions, which we're doing. But the thing that stood out to me the most was the social workers. They had social workers talk to them individually, people who were trained trained in working with people with mental illness. Look, the issues that we face out here, it's addiction, it's mental illness, it's trauma. And look, those are tricky territory. They really, really are. But they're not uncharted territory.
That's exactly right, Ben. I couldn't agree with you more. And there are professionals. There are not silver bullets that can fix any of these things. They are problems that have emerged as a consequence of years of an economic rigging of a system, whereby more and more of the financial resources of our country went into the hands of a very few, so that there was less money for healthcare, less money for education, less money spent on many of the things, especially starting in early childhood, that help people build their lives. Then later, the society pays much more on issues like mental health, on issues like addiction, on issues like the unhoused, which is the current term. And it's going to be a process and a journey of recovery and repair and renaissance, as you say. But I couldn't agree with you more. It's about beginning the articulation of those things, knowing that we do have the money for it, knowing that it's not, and I agree with what you're saying, it's not as simple as just building a house for someone. It does have to do with mental health, with re-education, it's beyond job training, it's life repair. We have to think in terms of life repair for broken lives. Right. And someone to articulate that, someone to actually be in a seat of power on things like city councils, neighborhood councils, this is how the change will happen. And there's an urgency now. We have to go beyond the articulation. And this is what the people who are watching you right now and taking part in your campaign going to make it happen. It's not enough to just talk about it. Ben's running. And now It's a matter of what it's going to take. When is the actual election? When is the...
Thank you for asking that. Well, it's all vote by mail. So the window of actual voting is quite soon. It begins on April 9th. Goes all the way till June 9th. And
April 9th to June 9th.
April 9th to June.
That's a big window of time.
It's a big window.
Wow.
So what we're doing is we're leveraging the fact that they're giving us that great window. We're communicating with as many people digitally and in person as possible so that we can register people to vote. We want people to know that they're even eligible. You don't have to be an American citizen to vote in this election.
This is amazing.
It's incredible. It's like Venice is its own country.
Yeah, it's always been that. Venice has always been kind of its own country.
Yeah. It's its own universe. I saw something today that said Venetian, synonym, shaman, healer, sage, genius. It had all these things, and it's so true. To be a Venetian is almost like a state of consciousness. It's a creative, open. I was saying to someone today, they said, "Well, what makes it so? Why do you love Venice so much?" And I was like, "It's magic. It's magic.
And always
there's magic in Venice."
And I think that what you're talking about here is protecting the magic.
Right.
Protecting the magic, because if you get too many, multi-million-dollar condos in too many places and too many of the malls, we know you got to save those mom and pop stores. You got to save those little restaurants. You've got to save, and if the rent gets too high, then that restaurant can't be there. We all know now. It's like we know enough now. We have to act on it. I think it's fabulous that you're running, Ben, and I'm really impressed by how. You've said to me when we've talked on the phone that you've really been digging into the issues, and it's clear to me listening to you that you have. And I see, and I say this very sincerely, I see a real future for you. And I hope that your campaign will inspire a lot of people to do what you're doing. Because, everybody talks about how they want to feel power. Sometimes people, particularly women, will say, how do I find my power? How do I find my voice? You find your voice by using it on behalf of someone other than just yourself. Yes. You find your power by using it on behalf of someone beyond just yourself. And that's what politics is. Politics is our collective behavior. and people who are elected representatives in any kind of a government job is representing the group conscience. I mean, there's something very profound there. I think it's so beautiful that you've seen that as a route that you want to move forward. And I'm so glad to see all the people here who feel that you want to support him in doing that, because I think that there's that Renaissance means something new being born, and I think something new is being born, not just in Venice. Something new is being born. Of course, so many things that are new in the culture are born in California. I know in my career, no other city would have given it to me. Los Angeles gave it to me, and so many. We all know this. If it starts in California, within 5 years, it's a cultural impulse throughout the world. And I think a political renaissance. I know, even though when I was running, of course, when I ran for Congress, and my my naivete was thinking I could run as an independent because of the way the parties sew things up, et cetera. But even though then when I ran for president, I wasn't running specifically from California, but it's California consciousness. And it's time. California leads in every other area, and it's going to lead the political revolution as well. Yes. The new consciousness brought to politics that's so necessary. So you go.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for that. You know, there's been a really exciting turn of events the last couple of weeks. More and more people are actually joining us on these calls. People are joining me on the council calls. We're regrouping after. We're talking about the issues. People have access to me, so they're processing.
We all know everybody has your cell number. That's hilarious. That won't last forever.
Well, exactly. It won't last forever. Get in on it, ladies.
Get in on now while you can call him.
Yeah, get it in there. Yeah, because I won't. It's there. It is really mine. So let's talk. And what I think is so important right now is just the reality that this is about all of the different Venetians, all of the different people who are here. People who've been here just a couple years and people who have been here multiple generations. It's one of those things where it's like, look, I'm not in charge of where you came from or anything like that, but they're here now. We're here now. We're here together in this space now. Venice is a vortex. It is magic. It's a beacon of light. It brought you here for one reason or another. One of the volunteers at our volunteer meeting the other day said, I think people are here for healing. I think that people are drawn here for healing, And when we think about the biggest issue, just a few years ago, the city of Los Angeles said we had about 125 homeless or unhoused people here. And the most recent number is unfortunately
I was going to ask you.
It was 125. Now it's over 2,000. Just in a few years. And so some of it is pandemic and some of it is unfortunately traceable to very specific legislation that has intentionally, likely behind closed doors, identified Venice as a containment zone. And people don't feel safe here. There was a gentleman in his 70s just a couple weeks ago who was killed by someone, was hit, fell to the ground, died a couple days later from those injuries he sustained. This is so important. We have to take new, inspired action that's actually going to keep our neighborhood safe. It's a beautiful place to be. It's a great place to be. But if there's holes in the boundary, if the foundation's not strong, we're not going to be able to really stand on it. If there's a leakage in the dam won't hold. We have to figure out, just like you've said, we have to say, boundary. If someone's in our house, if someone's robbing us, we don't say, they're in our house taking, okay, what else do you want? My mom, I remember one time someone came into the house and my mom yelled at that guy like it was my brother. She yelled at him like he was a little boy in her house, and he got out of there. He turned around and ran. And that is the energy. That's what I see as the divine feminine. Venice is not only named for Venice, Italy. That word means Venus. And so there is goddess of love. Venusian. Yeah, there is a Venusian energy here, and there's something, and look, it's not just New Agey, it's archetypal. It's just the reality that there are the creativity and the poetry and the healing. I saw someone made a heat map of all the yoga and ecstatic dance and mindfulness classes in the world, like a heat map where it's like brighter in different places. And Venice, you better believe it, bright red, high concentration of healing events, of ecstatic dance and all that kind of stuff. You know, this is a place where something really, really interesting can happen, you know. And for me, I'm a dancer, I'm a meditator, I have a great time with the rest of them. But I do get things done. And I know that there are people here who are like that. And that's who I've been talking to. One of the women I spoke with today, her name is Lauren. She works in Venice, lived here for years, loves it. Born and raised in Austin, moved here a decade ago or so. And this is her new home. And when she started to talk about politics, when she started to talk about the encampment right outside her home, she had such an ingenious approach to it. Her mind was just completely different than the minds of those small handful, that small quorum of people who are on the council right now.
So
And
what was it? What did she think that you should do?
well, she just had more of an open perspective to a number of different things. And just that gentle openness of a multiplicity of approaches. Look, there's a lot of different things that we've got. We've got co-living operations where we're helping people live for $1,000 a month in Venice in great real estate. In communal shared spaces. We've got affordable housing opportunities. The city is trying to experiment with all these different things. There's talking about tiny home villages and things like that. To be honest, one of the most important things is we can't hyper concentrate this as a containment zone. That's what's making it so unsafe. There are places throughout Los Angeles where we can decentralize services. We can decentralize the encampments. We can create campgrounds where there are unused plots of land right now. It doesn't need to be the wild, wild west where we stop enforcing everything. We don't need to arrest every single unhoused person because they're breaking fire code. But however, fire code is an important part of the law. We just had a fire on the boardwalk where over 100 firefighters had to put that fire out. Thankfully, no one was hurt, no one died, etc. But of course, we know that was lucky. We had a miracle in Venice Beach that day that no one was hurt. And so we do have to take these things more seriously. And we have to simultaneously get real about the fact that people in desperate situations can't be trusted to do healthy, safe things. It's not a safe situation. And we have to simultaneously honor their dignity, not arrest them, not re-traumatize them and just throw them in jail, you know? And so some people say, well, why doesn't Santa Monica have that problem? Well, Santa Monica has other rules. It's its own city. They clear them out in a different way. You know, so Venice has been generous. Venice has been patient. But at the same time, we have to be firm on both sides. We have to say, yes, these people deserve respect. They deserve hot showers. They deserve, you know, I've been bringing hot coffee on Sunday mornings. And I've just been going around and just giving out hot coffee on Sunday mornings, not because I want them to stay there and I want to keep them there. You know, someone said that to me. They were like, well, it sounds like you want them there. No, it's not that. It's that I can't get them a house right now. I don't have all the resources right now. But what I can do is hand them a hot coffee and honor the dignity of their humanity. I think we can simultaneously honor the dignity of the humanity of those individuals and recognize it's not safe for anyone, that they're all in these huge concentrated encampments, that they're getting bigger and bigger, and they're not being regulated by the laws that are already in place.
I find what you're saying really smart and really inspiring. And if I lived there, I would definitely get that ballot, and I would vote for you as quickly as possible. And I'm sure I'm not the only person listening to you who feels the same way, Ben. This, you definitely would have my vote. Good for you. Good for you.
Thank
and
you
that's
very much, Marianne.
your combination of an intelligent understanding and analysis of the situation, along with real serious problem solving, and your concern for the dignity and the deep humanity of these people. That combination is what people want, on both left and right, by the way. And
Yes.
I think Venice is going to be greatly served by your being in office.
Thank you so much. You know, when I was working in anti-human trafficking, I worked in with a number of different task forces all over the United States and in other countries around the world. And in that process, you learn to navigate nuanced situations with a bunch of different minds, people who see things differently. You know, you develop a skill set for hearing people out and pinpointing some of the specificity, you know, the specifics of scenarios, you know, and doing different things throughout the years, being a part of a few laws being changed, and also being a part of like the nonprofit private sector. I think it's very exciting. I feel very excited. It's almost like starting a new project. I've got 4 books coming out. It almost feels like a book. I've got 4 books that have already come out. It almost feels like a book. It almost feels like there's this new possibility, this entire new project, where in a way where there's an entire new conversation to happen. There's enthusiasm and excitement and workshops. And so what I'm excited about is embodying something, making the effort to embody something. The intention, a lot of time we talk about setting intentions. I love the word intention because it's invoking a tendency. It's invoking a tendency from in ourselves. It's not just one thing. It's I want to get into the rhythm of something. If I'm intending something, I really want to become something. And the intention that I've been working with, inspired by you, inspired by something that you said new paradigm leadership is holding space for the brilliance of others. And so my intention is not only to be intelligent and sophisticated and present and available, but also to do my absolute best to embody that new paradigm leadership, holding space for the brilliance of others, you know, holding space for the intelligence and the creativity that's already here.
Absolutely. And I think that that's what you're demonstrating. And I think that that's what people can see. And one of the things when you were talking about the unhoused, not every situation is the same. Eisenhower said that the American mind at its best is both liberal and conservative, that there are certain principles that we rely on because they do not change, which have to do with the kind of society we want, and also that have to do with our moral principles. But at the same time, you have to understand enough and bring various skill sets to bear, the various skill sets that you've had in your life, to actually work with individuals and situations that are constantly moving. You were talking about it being like a book. A political campaign is a pop-up business.
Right.
That's what it is, really. And it's a set
and it has a
period
message.
of time.
That's what I loved about what your campaigns have done is, and I remember learning this kind of for the first time when you were in for Congress, and I've applied this realization from the gestation period of this campaign, is you changed Los Angeles when you ran.
Oh,
Everything
thank you.
changed. Everything changed for me. Everything changed for a lot of people that I knew. And just hearing you, just you doing you just up there, especially when it got hard. I remember there were some things that were not true being spoken about you in the media.
Me?
And,
You're kidding? No.
and of course, about 1,000 times more when the presidential campaign rolled around, you know.
A million times more.
Yeah, 1,000,000 times more. Yes.
Dangerous,
And
kooky, wacky.
when that was happening, I felt just inside me to speak up and to just talk about what I know about you, because it felt like such a caricature of falsehood, you know, and some of it would have been a lot of fun if it wasn't so viciously untrue.
Yeah. Well, it's the politics of personal destruction. That's the way they kill you these days, is they just find whatever way to nullify your voice.
Yes.
And making someone appear ridiculous is certainly a way to nullify their voice.
Yes, I remember in Alice in Wonderland, which is riddled with wonderful insight and symbolism, off with their head. We don't need to actually cut their head off anymore. We just need to say that they've lost their head.
Yeah, she's wacky, she's dangerous. And of course, there's deep misogynistic, archetypal, ancient stuff there. Somebody's witchy, she's a witch, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where the patriarchy is so powerful in its ability to cast aspersions onto a woman in a way that it wouldn't even try with a man. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We got to change that. We got to fix that.
That's something that's so important to me. I take it personally. The problem of racism is a white problem. The problem of sexism is a man's problem. As a cis white male, I am queer. Shout out to the LGBTQ community. But as a white male, I know that there are archetypal things, that there are forces, even within me, something that I used to call was mindfulness-based decolonization. Mindfulness-based decolonization, noticing the areas within our own consciousness where there are unconscious prejudices, things that have come up,
Well, I
maybe
think
through circumstance.
when it comes to misogyny, though, part of the problem is how many women have internalized misogynistic prejudices. So when you see women who, from a deep misogynistic place, have been caricatured or in whatever way slandered, etc., what's really sad in our society is to see how many times it comes from women.
Yes.
Yeah,
And you know, that actually was what happened on the congressional campaign.
yeah.
You were targeted by a woman related to women's issues.
Yeah,
And
that's right. That's right. There was a group of women, well, the neoliberals, and of course during the presidential, even more so. But I think that we learn from these things, you know, because I see that even with myself since the campaign, people start to see things differently. Um, you know, the society grows, the society evolves just like an individual does. It's just that with everything that we're going through on the planet today, it's like I said earlier, we can't tarry. We got to get this stuff fast. We got to learn,
right.
we got to move, and we got to change some things in really, really, really big ways. Or we could be talking about unsustainable trajectories, what we're already experiencing with climate change, et cetera. We are already in so many places in an area where we're really talking about accommodation now, accommodation to crises. You know, we've been through so much crisis. We've been through COVID. We've been through the Trump years, but there's some crises up ahead. And we need to work right now to be able to accommodate them, to endure them in order to transform them.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the metaphor that comes to mind is when every single time you get on an airplane, you go through a mini training. When that air mask comes down, you got to put it on yourself first, and then you help the people around you. And imagine that decentralized mini training. Every single flight, there's a certain amount of people who know what's up, and when those drop, they get it, and then they help those around them. And so instead of saying you could logically say, all right, person in seat 1A needs to put their oxygen mask on, and then we'll make sure person in B oxygen mask on. And person, you got instead of doing, they just say, look, everyone, this is how you do it. You got to do yours first and help those around you. That's what I love about Love Thy Neighborhood. This is about putting the oxygen mask on our community. Through learning more about our community, we begin to learn more about our community's relationship to neighboring communities. And we start to find that there are things that need to go up the ladder. You know, one thing that I think is so special that you shared that I've taken with me and I've taken and applied. You said it about the nation. I believe it's also true about the world. And I think it's true about my home, my neighborhood here in Venice. This neighborhood, this country, this world should not be run like a business. It should be run like a family.
Take care of the children first and the older people.
Yes,
and you love
exactly.
each other.
And front-loading resources for the children, making sure the children have everything that they need, making sure the most unfortunate have their needs, making sure the elderly have ways to live dignified lives. And that's something that Venice wants. Venice is doing, and we are infusing it, and it is happening, and it is amplifying. I wanted to ask you one more thing before we go. First of all, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Marianne is the bomb. Make sure to listen to her podcast. Come to my page. You can text me if you want, and it is me. And I will text you back, okay? And then I also want you to check out bendeckerforvenice.com. Join our mailing list. I'm launching a lot of content and everything starting tomorrow because this is the official campaign launch. Marianne, thank you so much for being here. I love you. I was wondering if, I spoke to you after the inauguration, and something that really stood out to me was what was spoken in the prayer. Repentance, restitution, and also I loved the end where he said, in the powerful name of our collective faith. Amen. Acknowledging the transcendental faith that all people of no religion and all different religions share in common. I was wondering if you would give us the gift of saying a prayer for Venice. For us.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
In the name of our collective faith, we in the center of our hearts, move to the all creative source, that which is all powerful, that which is good, that which is true, that which is just, that which is merciful. And we surrender all that we have and all that we are, that the forces of love and goodness might use us. And we pray that Ben and all politicians who seek to serve that goodness, that love, that justice, that mercy, and all of us as citizens, be guided on our path, that what occurs here in this city, in this state, in this nation, and in this world shall be an overcoming by which love replaces all fear, peace replaces all conflict, and goodness replaces all that is the force of fear, pain, and suffering which plagues us now. And so it is. Amen.
So it is. Amen. Thank you so much,
Oh, you're so
Marianne.
welcome.
What an honor.
You're so welcome. God bless you. Good luck. Keep going. And I hope all of you who are watching will not only vote for Ben, but do everything he needs to help him. Talk to your friends, create the buzz. People in California know how to create buzz. Create it for Ben. I'm sure you feel, as I do, that he can go far. Help him do it. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye,
you so much.
darling.
We love you, Marianne. Bye. See you soon. Thanks, everybody.